So, I was talking about my childhood in the last video that I made, and I wanted to continue that with a few more stories from my childhood. I was raised, as I had said before, by a mother that was eccentric, to say the least. And among the things that she did was she would tell lies about, I guess, the way the world works. And being a child, I would believe these things. For example, we used to live by the Indian reservation, and the Puyallup River in Tacoma, Washington kind of marked the edge of the tribal lands, more or less. So we lived close to that. And I remember my mother would tell me that the Indians lived on the other side of the river. And if you went over there across the river, they would kill you and they would scalp you. And you would be dead. So, you know, I had this image of these Indians on the other side of the river. And I thought of them kind of like savages from the 1700s who were just bloodthirsty, hipping and hollering and hooting and running around with knives ready to kill the white people. You know, like, just, if there's a way to take Indians, Native Americans, and turn them into a racist caricature, that's what my mother did. And the crazy thing about this is, as a child being told this, I didn't really even give it any second thought. I just thought that's how it is, you know, like, you don't go over there. And the weird thing is, in hindsight, I look back and think, well, you know, why would I believe that? And the truth is, I just believed it because when you're a kid, you assume that your parents are going to probably tell you the truth. You don't really have any reason to question it. You just go with it. And then in hindsight, later on, you look back and you think, my goodness, that was just totally ludicrous what I was taught to believe in that particular situation. And that's not the only thing. Like, another example was, she would tell me that black people were the descendants of Ham. And what this means is, if you are a certain type of denomination of Christian, you might believe this, that when there was a flood, Noah had these boys, and they were all in Noah's Ark, and then they came out, and they were getting settled again in the world after the flood. And you had Ham and Shem and Japheth, these three boys that were Noah's boys. And as it turns out, supposedly, according to this racist legend, the three boys were there one evening, and Noah got drunk. And so he was drunk and inebriated, and he was hanging out, and he was naked. And his three boys saw him naked. And Shem and Japheth, they had decided to respect their father and protect his honor. So they got a towel or a blanket, and they walked backward toward their father somehow without really looking at him directly, because they didn't want to stare at him naked. And then they covered him up because they wanted to cover his shame and respect him. But Ham was just a naughty boy, and he just looked right at his naked father and laughed at him and mocked him. And so as it turned out, according to this story, Ham was cursed by God at that moment, and as a result of this curse, all of his descendants, forever and ever, were black. So this is the whole story that I was told. Again, as a moderately small child, I was told this story. And just like the Indians on the other side of the river, I believed this as well, because I was taught this. And it wasn't something that seemed in any way unusual. It just seemed very normal. Like, of course, that's the story. That's where black people have come from, right? And then again, like I said, to the same point I was making before, you look back on this stuff later on, years down the road, and you think, well, how could I believe that? Like, that's really ridiculous. But it's not really ridiculous when you're a child and you don't know any better, and somebody who you should be able to respect and trust tells you this, right? So, they're kind of funny stories to think back on just because they're kind of ridiculous. But it's also important to be a critical thinker. And that's something I think most people struggle with in today's society. We think that we know what it's like to use good judgment. We think that we know the truth, but quite often what we actually are doing is just believing what we're told to believe by social media or some political figure or some religious leader or our family or our friends or peer pressure or our employers. And we don't really think out of the box, because we think, okay, well, I'm going to think for myself, but I'm going to think for myself within the parameters of this premise, which limits my ability to be critical of sources that I just take at face value and never question. So, for example, you could be a critical thinker, but then you also automatically assume that everything maybe you read in the Bible is word for word true, or you believe that everything that your church tells you is 100% true, or you believe that everything a certain political party that you align with tells you is 100% true. Okay, so or you assume that your family, because they're your family, they would never steer you wrong. And Ayn Rand once said, if you are feeling like you encounter a conflict or a contradiction, you have to question your premises, because one of them is going to be wrong. And there is no such thing as a contradiction. It's just sometimes we base our reason and our thinking on flawed premises, and then we wonder, why do we have a sense of conflict within us? The truth is, life just is what it is. It's pretty simple. You look around, you can see the truth, and the truth is sometimes what we want, and quite often it's maybe things that we don't want to admit or face. But you can't really even begin to move forward if you don't have a willingness to say, okay, I may have been told something or taught something that is not correct, and so I'm going to just think for myself and work through this and kind of say, okay, well, what does the facts look like? And you have to be willing to walk away from that sense of safety that comes from just trusting blindly. And that's hard, because we want to be able to trust people in our lives. And so saying, okay, I'm going to maybe trust people, but I'm going to verify that this trust is worth my time too. That's kind of maybe a hard balance to walk. And then I also just think it's important to question, to what degree do we have the capacity to acknowledge that we have been deceived? I think people are a lot more able to change their mind from one false premise to another false premise. Much more easy to kind of go from one deception to another deception than they are able to actually surrender a bad idea and then allow there to be a void of emptiness. Like, to say I don't know is something that we're really uncomfortable with. We have to fill the empty space with a sense of knowing, a sense of here's the final solution to the problem that I've been pondering. And for a lot of things, there really isn't any sure solution to be had. You can't just say, here's the answer. You have to leave a question mark there and say, I don't know. Now, I know that based on all the information I can have before me, I don't believe certain things because they don't appear to be correct. Maybe I can have an idea of the truth, but overall, I can't actually know the truth in fullness. I have to leave a question mark there and say, you know, maybe I have room for faith, but I can't create an absolute picture of what that looks like. I have to say I don't know. And people don't want to say I don't know. So they always fill the empty space with something. And quite often, that's just going from one bad idea to another. It's kind of like somebody who can't bear not to be in a relationship. And so they go from one toxic and dangerous relationship to another because they can't have nothing in their life. They have to have something, somebody. Even if it's not the right thing, at the end of the day, something is better than nothing. And so we do this with ideas. We don't want to say, I don't know. We don't want to say, I don't have an answer to that. And so we fill it with whatever the first thing is that comes along. Just like a kid believing blindly what their parent or guardian tells them because they don't have any reason to believe anything else. It's a dangerous thing to believe that you are right to the point where you can't change your mind. And it's also dangerous to continue to change your mind, but to go from one bad idea to another and never actually just be honest and upfront and say, I don't have all the answers. I don't know. And that's where, you know, the beginning of wisdom is understanding how much you don't know. Like, I think probably in terms of qualifications for leadership and things like that, quite often you'll see that people who are the most fit to be in a leadership position are going to be the people who are most likely to acknowledge their shortcomings and be very aware of what they are and what they are not. People who are really capable of self-diagnosing their own faults and shortcomings, and they know what their faults are, they know what their problems are, and they're open and upfront about that. They're more likely to be able to navigate those things than people who kind of put blinders on and then are susceptible to a willful ignorance about their own lack of knowledge. So life's a really interesting kind of a thing, and sometimes you will be deceived. That's just the truth. And sometimes you'll be deceived in a very simple, ridiculously obvious way. And that leads me to another thought, and that is it's very important that you're able to change your position, even if that makes you look stupid. Because sometimes it's easy to say, well, I've always believed this, and I've believed it for so long. I don't want to look foolish. I don't want to appear to be waffling. I don't want to make people think that I've changed in some way. I don't want to undermine my credibility. So I'm just going to kind of go with the flow and continue to go along with something that I know deep down inside is probably not true or not good. And, you know, sometimes you just got to say, you know what? I was wrong. And I'm going to now change my mind about this. I'm going to move forward in a different direction. And breathe in, breathe out. Tomorrow's a new day. And you're going to have a different set of beliefs tomorrow than you did today. Just accept it. Are people going to think that you're stupid? Are people going to say, well, I told you so, or stuff like that? Well, sure, probably. But it's not about what other people think. It's about, are you living your life on a basis of seeking out, first and above all, true north, the truth. It's really important that you don't use your previous failures as a reason to perpetuate them. And it's really, really a very real thing. You know, imagine that you are a leader of people of some kind. You're a manager of people, maybe, or something like that. You've let people get away with things that they shouldn't get away with. And then you want to say, okay, I'm going to hold people accountable for their behaviors and make sure they're doing the right thing. But then you don't want to be that guy that, you know, people are going to say, well, why were you were fine with this before, now you're not fine with this. So you're just, you know, why are you acting out? Why are you suddenly being mean? Or somebody wanted to maybe quit a bad habit like smoking or doing drugs or drinking or something, and they stop it. But then, you know, they know their friends are going to be like, well, what's wrong with you? You know, like, you're just being stupid. And so there's that sense of not wanting to create a social stigma of being judged for being different. And so sometimes we can just go with the flow and hang on to these incorrect ways of thinking long after we should have let them go, long after we really honestly did know that we were wrong. We still hang on to those practices because it's easier to just go with it than it is to have people think that you're fickle or think that you're changing in a way that's disingenuous or inauthentic. It's just very important that we're able to change. And it's important to be able to get rid of things when you know that they're wrong. And then also understand that you don't have to have all the answers to know when something is incorrect. You know, I'm not a scientist. I don't understand how to launch a rocket to Mars. I don't know how to do the calculations to do a moon landing. But I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that I can speak to the fact that the Earth is round, and I'm going to be able to have a reasonable amount of surety when I try to debunk somebody who says the Earth is flat. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the things that we can learn casually about the observable universe are correct and true on a basic level. And, well, maybe I'm kind of getting off in the weeds here. The point I'm getting at is you don't have to be a scientist to understand the basic gist of what's true and what's not. And there's people that'll tell you, well, you know, the moon landing is fake. Were you there? No, you weren't there. So how can you prove that it's not real? I mean, how can you prove it is real if you weren't there? Well, I can't. I can't prove 100% that the moon landing wasn't faked in a Hollywood studio. It's possible. But based on all of the information I have available to me in my judgment, I'm going to say it probably wasn't fake. Just like I'm going to tell you that the Earth is probably round and not flat based on my judgment. You don't have to know everything in order to have discernment. And there's a lot of people who will always use your lack of knowledge as proof that you're wrong. You know, I don't know if the carbon dating system is 100% accurate. I don't know what prehistory looks like in terms of human civilization. I don't know if the premise for evolution is accurate the way it's presented in modern teachings. But if you compare all of that to the general blanket notion that God made everything in 6 days and then took Sunday off, well, I'm going to say that probably based on an unbiased and fair look at all things we have available to us, the scientific minded approach makes a lot more sense. So all of this to say, don't allow other people to say that you don't have enough knowledge to think for yourself. And there's a lot of times when people with incomplete and often dangerous ideas will come at you and say, well, you have to believe what I'm telling you, and you aren't smart enough to think for yourself because you don't know everything. Therefore, you should believe what I'm telling you. And then you might think, well, it's true. I don't know everything. So maybe I'm wrong. Well, you also have to trust your judgment. And sometimes if you just adhere to the principle of Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is most often the correct one. Well, what appears to be right, what feels right, what seems like it's probably right, it probably is right. And when somebody else tells you that you have to believe what they believe just because you are somehow not qualified enough to think for yourself, well, you got to remember, a lot of people believe a lot of lies. And they believe them authentically. They are not getting up in the morning thinking, oh, how can I deceive other people? Or how can I deceive myself? They just genuinely believe things which are wildly far from the truth. And if you have a practice of believing people or trying to say, well, who should I believe? Well, the answer is you probably shouldn't be believing anybody. Because everybody you encounter that's going to tell you what to believe is probably going to tell you a lie. If you ever find somebody who's going to tell you the truth, it's probably going to be the person who says, here's my opinion about something, but I'm not going to tell you what to believe because I don't know for sure. The person that says, here's some things to think about, but I'm not going to tell you that that's absolutely the truth. And you have to trust your own gut and your own research and your own reason. Well, that's probably the person that you can trust more because they're not really telling you what to believe. But when somebody says, hey, come over here, let me tell you what the truth is, it's usually a lie. And that's hard to accept because it means that a lot of our relationships in life are built on lies. Because most of the time, people's interpersonal relationships are based on trying to get other people to align with them. People want other people to believe what they believe. People want you to be part of their political party. They want you to be part of their religious beliefs. They want you to be part of their organization. Or they want you to align with their employer or whatever their mission might be. Everybody wants to recruit people for their thing. And if you take out those agendas, people don't really have a lot of reason to even interact with each other. People usually will lose interest in each other once they realize that the other people around them are not going to be giving them what they want. Once people realize that you're not going to validate their position, they lose interest, they move on, they try to find another target. So thinking for yourself actually means you're going to be alone. In many ways, you're going to have to come to terms with the fact that your life is a lonely one. Because when you take out all the people that are trying to sell something, there's not a lot of people left. So the question is then maybe, do you have courage to be alone? Alone with your thoughts, alone in your life, if that's the price you have to pay to be open to the truth. And on the front side, that might seem like a very high price to pay. But in the end, there really is no price too high for having the freedom and the liberty to think for yourself. And I'll tell you right now, I don't have all the answers in life. There's a lot of things I have no idea what to even make of all of it. I look at all the things going on in the world, I don't know. Don't know what to make of all of it. I have more questions today than I ever had before because I have more of a capacity now probably than ever before to acknowledge just how much I don't know about the world and about philosophy and about what maybe the right path to take is. But I also can get up in the morning and say, you know what? My life is completely honest and transparent. There's nothing in my life that is something I really have to defend because the truth never really needs anyone to defend it. It's just as simple as saying, I don't believe things that I can't prove. And a lot of things in life, maybe I think I have a position, but it's not empirical. I'm not going to tell you that I could not possibly be wrong. I could be. And I'm not going to sell my soul to somebody else who's going to tell me what to think. And when you get up every day and you have a sense of autonomy, it doesn't fix the problems. Like, you still are going to have things that keep you up at night. You're still going to have things that make you worry. You're going to still have things that make you doubt yourself and think, my goodness, did I make the right call, or how's it all going to work out in the end? You'll still have all that stuff. But you at least also have the assurance that you're not lying to yourself. You're not that ostrich that's got his head buried in the sand thinking, well, the enemy can't see me because I can't see it. When you really know deep down inside that all that's hogwash. Like, a convenient lie still leaves a bad taste in your mouth because some part of you knows that you're believing a lie. Just like no matter how much I might have believed weird, wild stories that I was told as a child, if I actually thought about it, there's a point where I had to acknowledge none of that made any sense. And so letting go of those things is liberating because it enables you to be true to yourself. Be true to yourself. Don't let anyone else play God in your life with your mind. Don't let somebody come along and say that they're going to be a guru and a teacher that's going to sell you some kind of magic solution to all of life's problems or tell you the answer to the ultimate question or any of that. Doesn't matter who it is. Nobody has all the answers. You don't have all the answers. So just accept that there's a lot of things in life you don't know. Be humble. Take a position, but don't be super absolute about it. Be willing to change your mind. Don't be afraid of what people think of you if you do decide that you're going to go a different direction than the direction you've been going before. It's much better to change your course after you've made a mistake for a while than it is to never change your course and to continue making the same mistake over and over again forever. Don't put too much faith in other people. Because the truth is, no matter how much you care about other people, no matter how much maybe you love them, no matter how much you want them to do what's right for you, people have all sorts of crazy things that go on in their head, and you can't ultimately trust them. You can't trust them 100%. You have to trust yourself first and above all. And even if you aren't entirely sure, you're better off trusting your best judgment than somebody else's best judgment who's just telling you that you need to fall in line and believe what they're telling you. Super hard because we're social creatures. We want to align with things. We want to say, well, what camp do I go join? What club am I going to be part of? What am I going to align with? But the truth is, it's not about aligning with something. It's not about picking the winning team. It's about saying, I'm not really part of any team. I'm just going to be open-minded to ask hard questions and oftentimes accept the fact that there are no sure answers to a lot of life's questions. So in closing, what are your thoughts on this? Have you ever believed something that you then realized later on was completely ridiculous? Or have you had to change course in life when you realized maybe that you were wrong about something? And did you find that that was a difficult experience to navigate? I always love to hear your thoughts. In any case, always good luck on your adventure. Till next time, thanks for watching.